Welcome to my channel, Proper Pixel. My name is Alex, and today's topic is extending React types to our TypeScript components. Let's get started. So I'm going to hop over into Code Sandbox and create a new TypeScript React project. And this will be publicly available after the video's out. So we're just going to go ahead and call this React extends props TypeScript. So that's what we'll call this. That's basically what we're doing. Perfect. So I'm going to create maybe a file that I would have done not too long ago before I found this out. And this was actually found right before I wanted to create my own custom component library with React and TypeScript and the whole works. And this really saved my bacon in having to maintain all of these different interfaces and type systems, and it was a headache and nightmare, and I just figured I need to go learn this. So it took me a minute to find it. Now I'm going to give this information to you guys. Hopefully it's useful. So let's get started. So, let's just go through. If you're a TypeScript developer, if you're not, I'm assuming that you have some basic understanding of both TypeScript and React. So we're just going to go ahead and work through this a little bit. So we're just going to create a button component here. Right now, it's just going to return a typical JSX button. It's not going to be anything fun. It's just going to be a button, okay? But we need to be able to pass props to it. So, like everybody knows in TypeScript, we have to create an interface to declare the types of items that we want. I prefix all of my types and actually my interfaces with I. Button props would be an example. And this is maybe what I would have done, not too long ago, like I said, to pass properties into my application, or at least into my components. And with some of your components, you'll need to do this. But for some of our core components, we can get away with doing what I'm about to show you here in a little bit. But if you're going to create a button component, you're going to want to have a child element. So we're just going to throw a React node here. That's going to allow us to pass that children all the way down, like etc. We may need like an on-click event that's, is probably always going to want to be there. So we're just going to make that required. We may have an ID that we want it to be a string. We may have, a class name that we want to be a string, or a style object that's going to have to be like React.css properties, etc. And so what we can actually do now is say, we want these to be optional. They don't always have to be there, but we want to be able to spread these. So I'm just going to give myself a rest parameter here, which, if you're not familiar with that, it's just taking everything but this child, putting it into its own object, if you will, and then we can go ahead and do that same thing and just spread the rest of those into the actual button component. And so this works. This absolutely works. And if you want to go through and manually type out almost every single property that could be assigned to a button element or any other HTML5 element with React, you can do it this way. There's nothing wrong with it. And actually, a lot of people are taught to do it this way. Now, what I have found is what I'm about to show you now is something that I actually prefer. But I kind of want to show you how it's going to work. So if I come out here and I create a button, and this button is going to come from, I need to go ahead and import it here in a second. Let's go ahead and import that from button. And so in button, we need to have a child. So we're just going to say, I'm a button. So we'll say, I'm a button. What else is still? And we have an on-click that's required. And we're just gonna print something to the console real quick, just to get it annoyed. So we'll just say hello. So now, click on the button, console logs hello. Okay, so we have our base button, and we now need to do like an on mouse over, but we haven't created that yet, so now we need to go ahead and add it. So on mouse over, we want there to do something, we don't know, but we know that we need it. So now we can add that to the properties, and then we can come in here and say on mouse over. Whenever it mouses over, we can then, console.log I moused over, like so. And so anytime that you mouse over the button, it'll tell you that you moused over it. But you see what keeps happening, right? If I keep wanting to add additional properties, I have to go back to the source and add those properties. But with what I'm going to show you now is you don't have to do that. None of this is anything different than if you were to just create a button component or just use a button. The benefit of componentization through React is to be able to build on top of the base core logic and create new, better enhanced versions of just plain HTML components in HTML5, and allows you to build on top of and really do inheritance and structure this however you see fit. But this is one of the big things for me that's really helped me out in my component libraries. So I'm going to say this interface is actually going to extend React.button HTML attributes of type HTML button element. And notice how nothing is failing. Like right off the bat, nothing's failing. We have the children, and since we set this up earlier with our REST parameters, we can actually remove this and it's still going to work. And that's because inside of this button HTML attributes, you're not always needing to have a on mouse event. You're not always needing to have, heck, even an on click event. You can just have a plain button. The other benefit of this too, so let's say we didn't want an on click event and I want to set this type. This is all ready for you. You don't have to go in and say this type is a button, reset, submit. It's there and it's ready for you. You could give default types, right? So we can come in here and say, hey, we always want there to be a type of button, like always, right? And so what we can actually do is that, and then take over here. Let's get rid of our type. Let's save that. And then let's just go look at the HTML. Let's see what's going on over here. We've got our button. It doesn't extend the type because we got it inside of the REST. We got it out of the REST. So what we need to actually do is now put type equals type. It's one caveat that you still have to do whenever you give and reassign values or assign values at the beginning. But now each button that ever gets created is going to have that type. And you can override it if you need to. The other benefit of this is you can actually do what's called omitting. Now, if you're familiar with TypeScript, you do exactly the same thing that you would in extending an interface, and you don't necessarily want some of those pieces. You can do what's called an omit. So let's go ahead and omit. Let's omit class name and style, because those things are awful. So we'll stay in style. Okay, so now what that means is that if I come over here and I put in class name and I try to give it a class name and I hover over this, it's going to say type class name is not assignable to type, that and that. Property class name does not exist on those types. So what's really cool about this is now instead of doing a class name, we can lock this puppy down. We can say, hey, you're not going to get a class name, but you're going to get a priority instead. Right, so this is just like you would anything else. This isn't anything new, but maybe you could put in like a primary, a secondary, and maybe just a default. And then what we can do here is we could say priority is always going to be default unless otherwise specified. And then we can specify here that our class name, and see, we can still use this. This is what's great. We can come in here, we say btn-priority, like so. And then you can put in your CSS to make everything the way that you need it to be. So this is just a quick example of being able to extend. You could do this with just about every single base React component. You're going to create buttons, inputs, list items, select elements, checkboxes. I mean, one of the great things that I'll probably show in another video is being able to create an input component and then use that to create your checkbox, to create your radios, your number types, your date time pickers, etc. But really allows you to create these rather quickly. So let me know what you guys think. If this saves you any time, if it's a headache, if you found other things that I'm just not aware of at this point. Hopefully I've helped some of you out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, if this was helpful or not. Anyway, see you guys in the next one.